Think about the last time you bought something online, a phone, a pair of shoes, a laptop. You didn't think about where it came from. You didn't think about the ship it crossed the ocean on. You didn't think about the port it passed through or who controls the waters around it. But somebody did. And right now that somebody is winning. There's a headline going around. China and Russia killed the IMEC Corridor. The trade route that was supposed to reshape the global economy, the one that was supposed to cut China out of the picture, the one that was supposed to connect your world from India to Europe without going through Beijing's orbit. Dead on arrival, or so they say. But here's what almost nobody is telling you. China and Russia didn't kill IMEC. They didn't have to. Let's go back to September 2023. The G20 summit in New Delhi. India, the United States, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, the European Union, France, Germany, and Italy all signed a memorandum for something called the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. IMEC, a network of rail lines, shipping lanes, hydrogen pipelines, and undersea data cables linking India to the Gulf and the Gulf to Europe. The Atlantic Council called it the most strategically significant infrastructure initiative the West had attempted in a generation. A direct counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which by 2023 had already financed ports, railways, and roads across more than 140 countries. The message from New Delhi was unmistakable. The West was finally building its own version of the map. 3 weeks later, Hamas attacked Israel, and IMEC froze overnight. Here is the mechanism you need to understand. IMEC was never just a shipping route, it was a diplomatic bet. The entire northern leg of the corridor, the segment connecting the Gulf to Europe, depended on something that had never existed before in the modern Middle East. It depended on Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel operating as partners in a shared land transit network. That required Saudi-Israeli normalization. And normalization required a political environment that the Gaza war made impossible. Saudi public opinion turned sharply against any engagement with Israel. Jordan, which shares a long border with the West Bank, closed the diplomatic door entirely. The northern rail segment, the backbone of IMEC's European connection, was dead before a single track had been laid. But the story doesn't stop there. Because while IMEC was frozen in diplomatic ice, China was moving. China did not sit across a table and vote against IMEC. It didn't need to. Instead, Beijing accelerated the one alternative that was already being built. The Middle Corridor, formerly known as the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, connects China to Europe through Kazakhstan, the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. It goes nowhere near Russia. It goes nowhere near Iran. It was already attracting European investment after Russia's invasion of Ukraine made the old northern Eurasian land routes toxic. And in August 2025, China joined Middle Corridor Multimodal Limited, the joint venture coordinating the key logistics players along the entire route. Beijing didn't kill IMEC. It just made sure its own corridor kept moving while IMEC stood still. Russia's play was different. For Moscow, the corridor of choice is the International North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC. It connects Russia to India via the Caspian Sea and Iranian rail and ports. In January 2026, INSTC hit record traffic, with the first regular container train successfully linking the Moscow region to Iran's port of Bandar Abbas. It was Russia's answer to Western sanctions, a route that bypasses Western-controlled maritime choke points entirely. And for that route to work, Iran had to remain intact, functional, and connected. Then came February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, the death of Iran's supreme leader, and Tehran's immediate response closed the Strait of Hormuz. In a single moment, 21 million barrels of oil per day stopped flowing. Brent crude jumped from $65 a barrel to a peak of $126 within weeks. U.S. gasoline prices at the pump surged more than 40% in less than 3 weeks. The Hormuz Strait, 30 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, suddenly held the entire global economy hostage. And this is where the story of IMEC gets genuinely strange. Because the corridor that was designed to reduce exposure to exactly this kind of choke point still depended on the same waters. IMEC's eastern leg, the segment connecting India to the Gulf, is a maritime route. It passes through the same Persian Gulf that Iran was now mining and blockading. As the Geopolitical Monitor reported in June 2026, the corridor intended to provide resilience against the weaponization of choke points continued to depend on the same waters that regional instability had repeatedly closed. The Hormuz crisis also blew up Russia's corridor. U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian port infrastructure at Bandar Abbas threatened to collapse the INSTC. The same strikes that disrupted IMEC disrupted Russia's alternative. So in that sense, nobody won cleanly in the spring of 2026. But zoom out and ask the harder question, who was positioned to recover fastest? China's middle corridor runs through Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. None of those countries are in a war. Container traffic through the middle corridor grew significantly through 2025 and into 2026. China had already joined the coordinating joint venture. Beijing was moving goods while everyone else was watching missiles fall on Haifa. The Middle East Institute reported in May 2026 that IMEC implementation remained doubtful, with no firm funding commitments or construction timelines. No capital, no schedule, no operational corridor, just a memorandum signed at a summit 3 years ago. Meanwhile, according to research published by ISPI, the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, China had been using both the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Asian Development Bank to fund port, rail, and road upgrades across the Middle Corridor countries, pledging further support going forward. Infrastructure financed, routes operational, traffic flowing. This is how you win a corridor war without firing a shot. But here is the counterintuitive truth that the China and Russia killed IMEC narrative misses entirely. IMEC is not dead, it is redesigning itself. The eastern leg between India and the UAE has actually moved forward. A virtual trade corridor with digitized customs is taking shape between Mundra, Nhava Sheva, and Jebel Ali. Gulf mega projects like Saudi Arabia's NEOM are building out the port capacity the corridor would eventually need. Trump's top South Asia advisor, Ricky Gill, visited India specifically for an IMEC summit. Italy's ambassador told the press that India is certainly crucial to the project and is a protagonist in all three sectors of trade: goods, energy, and data connectivity. The question is not whether China and Russia killed IMEC. They didn't. The question is whether the West can build it faster than Beijing can make it irrelevant. Because here's what this actually means for you. Every time a corridor gets delayed, every time a trade route stays broken, the goods that move through your economy move through someone else's infrastructure instead. Someone else sets the terms. Someone else charges the toll. Someone else decides which countries get connected and which ones get cut off. The Belt and Road Initiative has been doing exactly that for more than a decade. 140 countries, ports, railways, data cables, pipelines, all wired back to Beijing. IMEC was the first serious attempt to offer an alternative at that scale. Not a China alternative, a you alternative. Your supply chain, your energy, your data, your phone's rare earth minerals, your EV batteries lithium, your country's undersea internet cables. The corridor isn't dead, but it's losing time. And in infrastructure, time is the only currency that actually matters. You check the price of something online today. You didn't think about where it came from, but somebody did. The question is whether that somebody is building the future you actually want to live inside.